Welcome to She Said podcast. As you can tell, we are now a party of one. Zoe has decided that she is just a little too stretched for time to continue joining us. That's why we've taken a break for a few weeks, along with some other things that have been going on. But I figured I would make another one, and we will talk about all kind of random things. So you guys may get tired of hearing my voice. But it is a wonderful, wonderful Wednesday. And there are lots of things that I wanted to talk about. One of the things that, that has happened recently is the stuff with Charlie Kirk. Now, granted, that was, over a month ago. I guess almost 2 months ago at this point. But I still feel like it's something important to talk about. So, we're going to talk about it. So, obviously, it came as a shock, and it was devastating and life-altering for lots of people, and everything with the unaliving of Charlie Kirk. And I actually hadn't found him until recently. A lot of his stuff started popping up in my algorithms, and I was very interested in his content. I mean, I'm a Christian anyways, but I've always been one of those people that I question a lot. And so I was very interested in his point of view, and the amount of knowledge this man had in his brain. I will always be a little bit jelly of that. Just the amount that he could retain and just like pull during a debate just off the cuff was just amazing. And I wish I could do that. But, it's fine. But, one of the things that really got me was the amount of people who were celebrating or excited or all of those things with someone who was unalived for literally like his opinion or his perspective or his information. Now, what I think is that obviously, he was reaching lots of people and lots of younger people and actually making a difference, and that was a threat to whoever it was a threat to, or someone with a mental illness decided to go off the deep end. Whatever the case may be, there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there. There's a lot of things that people have theories and perspectives and everything on, and I don't really want to focus on all of that. What I want to focus on is what Charlie's mission, or not agenda, but what he wanted to accomplish, what his goals were. Because I know that like when it happened, to me everything felt so heavy, and I mean for days, just like heavy, right? And I have always been, I was raised in a Christian household, and for a while I veered off. I, didn't make the decisions based on the things that I do now. But I have now had a new awakening, I guess. I'm interested in being able to really dig into the Bible and really understand it and hear other people's perspectives. But I also just don't want to blindly follow what someone else says, because even the Bible talks about asking questions. God would rather us ask questions than anything else, because obviously we don't want to give ultimatums or anything like that. But, in all of the videos and stuff that I've watched and seen with Charlie Kirk, he was open to discussion and dialogue, and he was kind and understanding and even inquisitive when people would come up and say things, and he would dig deeper and find more information. And I really hope that with this unfortunate event that it starts a revival where people actually want to know what he knew. And not even just in, the Christian aspect either, but I think we should all be informed when it comes to politics as well. And maybe that's just, a personal opinion, and you may not share it, and that's perfectly fine. But I want to be informed. I want to know what it is that I'm essentially getting myself into. And so, that there are lots of things that people called him, and it doesn't make sense. Like, people just have this word, like they take a word and the definition, and they warp it and they twist it into what fits their agenda or what fits their train of thought, whether or not the definition actually agrees with that or means that. But so, I can't understand the amount of hate from people who are supposed to be all-inclusive and understanding and all of these things, right? And people called him a fascist. Now, obviously, I had never used that word. I've heard it, but I wanted to look into all of the things. So I found the actual definition, which is fascism is an authoritarian, ultra-nationalist political ideology that emphasizes a dictatorial leader, the suppression of opposition, and a strict societal and economic control. AKA what Hitler did. I don't see Charlie Kirk being a fascist in the slightest. And it doesn't make sense to me that people would use those kinds of words to describe someone who literally had an open dialogue with people, who wanted to hear what they had to say, not necessarily to change their mind, but to plant that seed, to plant that information of, oh, I never thought of it that way. And I'm sure that at times they also brought things to him where he's like, you know what? I didn't look at it that way. And maybe not. I don't know. That would be an assumption on my part. But there is so much into being a fascist. And because he didn't agree with people who are, of the alphabet community, he automatically was homophobic. Listen, I can love you and still not agree with your lifestyle, but I also don't think that's part of your identity. I don't think that's who you are. I think that's a part of who you are. But I also don't need to know what goes on in your bedroom just based on your sexual preferences. Not my business, right? And so, one of the other things that they called him was a narcissist. Now, for someone who has very much been in a relationship with a narcissist, I got zero, and I mean zero, narcissistic vibes from Charlie Kirk. Okay? Not at all did I feel like he was manipulative, did I feel like he was gaslighting, or any of those things. Word salad. Okay? He literally pulled facts and information from that amazing brain that he had, full of just all the boxes of information, and was able to carry on a conversation with people and be like, oh, well, no, because of XYZ. Or, no, that's not actually what happened, and it was disproven on blah, 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 blah. Okay? I know that there's been a lot of talk and stuff, too, about his views changing on Israel. So I'm going to give you my my 2 cents for it. Okay. Israel as a nation was established in 1948. So when the Bible talks about Israel, there was no Israel nation established. Okay. And in Galatians, it talks about how the old covenant with Abraham ended and a new covenant was put into place when Jesus died on the cross. Okay? There was no longer Jew or Gentile, which means we're all the body of Christ. We are all Israel. So, and I don't know if he was coming to the same thought process that I am, where I'm not just going to blindly support a country that is mentioned in the Bible, but not even as a country, but as a people. And so I'm obviously doing more research and stuff into that so that I can have a better understanding. But from the things that I have looked into, Israel is the people. As the body of Christ, we are Israel. Not a country, not, that there is no longer Jew nor Gentile. I'll get into that another day, though. Maybe I'll have a whole episode where I break down the Bible and the things that I found, like, the mustard seed and the way that that's taught differently from the pulpit, but whatever. But anyways, so, he did a podcast shortly, I think it was like a month or so before everything happened, where he said he wanted to be remembered for the courage of his faith. Like, he wanted to be remembered for his faith. And that is definitely one of the things, like, out of all of the stuff that I've watched, he never wavered in his faith. He never wavered in the way that he believed in God and his relationship and how he was doing everything for that purpose. I also think that with this drastic thing that happened, it has caused a lot of people to reevaluate where they are in their lives, right? And figure out, maybe I should look into this. Maybe there is something behind it. Maybe I should go to church, or maybe I should open a Bible. I know that I saw a lot of posts and stuff of people opening or buying a Bible for the first time or going to church for the first time. Now, me personally, I'm very picky about the church that I go to. I actually haven't gone for many years because I dealt with a lot of negative things that happened in, like, the churches that I went to when I was younger and growing up in. And I'm like, I don't need to go to church to have a relationship with God. And I don't. But I like the sense of community. I like being able to be involved. I like helping my community. And that is easier and more fulfilling to do as, like, in the church and with a group of people, than it is to do individually. But there's also more opportunities where I, as an individual, can only do so much. In a group setting, there's more that I can do. And so we actually started trying out churches in our area. And the first two that I went to, I felt like the very first one was just, like, all about entertainment. And I went twice. Wasn't for me. The second one I went to felt like a certain denomination, even though they classify as non-denominational. But I grew up in, like, Assemblies of God, and it very much gave that vibe. And that's not the vibe I was going for. I couldn't feel God in there. It's all very structured, all very set on a timeline, and nothing, like, flows, right? So, church number 3, right? Amazing. Ticks all of my boxes, right? Now, God is obviously trying to tell me something, because in all 3 of these churches that we went to, it was Baptism Sunday. I kid you not. So I tell my daughter, hey, she didn't go with us, by the way, because she was sick or something. It's like, hey, it's baptism Sunday. She goes, calls me on her way home. I think it's a sign you need to get rebaptized. Well, you know what? Who am I to argue? I'm not going to argue with God. So, there we go. So eventually next baptism Sunday, my family and I are going to get baptized. And so, I'm not going to argue with what God wants. That's for him to decide. I'm just going to follow his lead because that's what I should do. And, back to, let me circle back after my rabbit trail. So I have always been one of those people that's like, I may not agree with what someone does, but I love them anyways because I want to show them God's love, right? And I feel like that's what Charlie did. Regardless, yeah, it's a debate. It was dialogue. They may not agree, but not out of any of that did I feel like he was rude or disrespectful or condescending, unless it was needed. Like the condescending was sometimes needed because people just whoo-hoo. But he was always understanding. He was always pulling information to explain his point. And I think that's where people got frustrated, is because, well, it doesn't matter. Well, no, it does matter, because in order to get to F, I've got to go A through D or A through E, right? And so I don't know if the purpose of the whole event was for them to silence someone, not realizing that when you try to do that, 100 more pop up, and I think we've seen that. And I hope that it continues, and I hope people stay with it, regardless if it's getting them the views or popular or whatever the case may be. And although we may have difference of opinions, I think open dialogue is super important. I think being able to have a conversation or a debate and not agree is like an important thing. So, and all these people want to call him like a narcissist or a fascist or whatever the case may be. But I think at that point they need to look in the mirror, because thou dost protest too much. I think you're maybe projecting your own issues onto someone else, which we tend to do, which is, I'm working really hard on the way that I do things and the way that I think about things, and this gave me a whole new perspective on what I think is important. So I think that with this, we need to really evaluate and take a look at what's going on in our lives, and are we having that open dialogue? Are we really steadfast in our faith, right? Are we really truly relying on God, or are we still relying on ourselves and sprinkling a little bit of God in, hoping, oh, here, give me your magic fairy dust? I really hope that we can really come together as Christians, not Catholics, not Lutherans, not whatever denomination you are, but as Christians, and show people that we're not those people on Sunday at the grocery store or at the restaurant who are too cheap to tip and are rude and inconsiderate. Because let me tell you, I experienced that all. I experienced all of that. I hate going shopping at the grocery store on Sundays, because that is when I get the most judgment. We're not supposed to judge. And that's one thing that Charlie Kirk didn't do. He didn't judge people. He didn't agree with them, but he didn't judge them. And him saying, I'll pray for you, that's not judgment. That's consideration. That's kindness. That's love. let me get off on my rant now. You know, so for me, I want to be bold. I want people to know that I'm steadfast in my faith, that I am relying on God. I am not relying on myself at all. And that is very evident in my personal life right now with all of the things that we have going on. And, you know, if you're in my circle, then you'd know. Obviously, I don't share a bunch of personal stuff, especially with what's going on right now. But, you know, you may feel like you can't be bold about your relationship or your faith in God because you're not knowledgeable. Well, there's books. There's videos. I pulled a lot of stuff and then looked into it myself from When Did Sin Enter the World? That is one that's interesting to look at because look at specifics. I'm gonna do a whole episode on all of the things that I have found and how things are tweaked or not mentioned, like omitted. But you're not alone. We're all here. We're a family. Stand firm. Stay humble. Revival doesn't start out there. It starts within us. So that's what I have for today. Thank you for joining me, and I will be here same time, same place, same chaos next week. Have a wonderful day.